Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 67. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. In unusual circumstances for this one, we are now just 24 hours away from the next Steelers game, playing 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time against the Baltimore Ravens. So in this crazy 3 games, 11-day stretch, really getting into it right now, play Saturday and then turn things around for the Wednesday Christmas game against the Chiefs. Dave, usual show though. Today we'll go through coordinators, injury situation. We now know the final injury report from the team, which is uncommon for a Friday morning show. Make our predictions, all that fun stuff. Dave, how you doing?
Yeah, happy Friday. And yeah, kind of a weird schedule coming up here. Obviously, with a Saturday game, turn around and have a Christmas Day game, and a lot to get to today, and a familiar opponent, a big game. Obviously, the Steelers can clinch the AFC North with a win. It might be their best chance to do so in this final 3 games. We got the Bengals still alive in this thing, thanks to what happened Thursday night between the Chargers and Broncos. What a weird game that ended up being. Exciting. It was a good game overall. Where would you like to start today? Injuries?
Oh, I just got to say from that game, we got to talk about the free kick, the first ever free kick since, 1976, whatever the stat was. So things you don't see too often.
Ray Wershing, and I don't know about you. I went and tried to actually find that kick and the video of it, and I could not find it. It's not on Twitter. There's references to it on Twitter. I could not. I even went to the old Game of the Week videos that you see on YouTube that are send you down a rabbit hole too. If you're not careful, you'll sit there and watch them. But I went to the game, I think it was like week 10 and 76 or whatnot. There's not much from that game in there. But a weird occurrence with that fair catch free kick. And the Chargers were actually the last team, I think, to do that, and it was against the Bills in '76, and Ray Wershing did it. So, interesting game overall.
All right, Dave, let's get into it. Injury situation. And again, because of the Saturday game, Pittsburgh's final injury report came out on Thursday. And so now we know the official statuses for the health of the team. Things can change a little bit in terms of some upgrades or downgrades for the guys who are questionable or doubtful. But ruled out for this game is quarterback Justin Fields with the abdominal injury he suffered against the Eagles. Also, George Pickens with a hamstring will miss his 3rd straight game with that injury. Neither officially practiced throughout the week, although Pickens was working pretty good on the side. Larry Ogunjobi and Donte Jackson are questionable with groin and back injuries, respectively. DeShon Elliott is doubtful with a hamstring injury. He was limited for Thursday, but that was his only limited session of the week. Ogunjobi limited all week, and Jackson got in limited work on Thursday as well. And TJ Watt, no game status. He will play with the ankle injury. Will he be on a snap count? We'll see. He says he doesn't want that, but if that's what it's required to play, then he'll accept that. So that is the one piece of good news is on TJ Watt, and we'll keep an eye on what happens to Ogunjobi and Jackson.
I would have bet you dollars to donuts that TJ Watt would have ended up questionable yesterday. The fact that he didn't is obviously a good sign, especially the way he said, we'll see during his presser and all like that. But the fact that he's not, barring any kind of setback pregame or anything like that, I mean, he's going to play. And now the question becomes, how much will he have to maybe play a little bit more on the other side in this game to kind of alleviate some of that stress on that injured ankle. The Steelers obviously are fine at the outside linebacker position with him and Herbig and Highsmith and Preston Smith and even God forbid they need him, Jeremiah Moon and all like that. So they should be able to rotate those guys around. I know TJ Watt says he's not looking forward to a snap count, but if that's the best way to kind of load management him because of the short week coming up, then so be it. But yeah, it's good to have him. Things ended up playing out, the way that we thought that they probably would with George. With George Pickens, and now we'll just wait and see if the Steelers have enough horses without him. It's obviously going to be a big loss not having George Pickens in this game. I think the biggest question overall is what's going to happen with Donte Jackson.
Yeah, that's a real coin flip. He has battled that back injury a little bit recently. Again, limited on the final Thursday practice. Maybe we'll get some sort of update in terms of upgrade, downgrade today. That'd be nice. Will they make an elevation? Do they have any corners to even bring up? I hadn't looked at the practice squad recently to see what options there are. CJ Henderson, obviously on IR. Obviously, if he can't play, then you would expect James Pierre to start and Corey Trice to dress after being inactive in the 2 weeks since he's come off of injured reserve himself.
Yeah, I'm kind of bet. Which way are you leaning on Jackson?
Leaning that he'll play and probably not make it through the game, which just kind of becomes the typical MO for Donte Jackson.
And obviously, Justin Fields has been ruled out for this game with an abdomen, so I don't think he can technically be the third quarterback in this one now. But I just kind of briefly thinking about the inactive list and assuming Larry Ogunjobi does indeed return from his 1 game absent from his groin injury. It feels like it's going to be Justin Fields inactive. It feels like Pickens, obviously. DeShon Elliott's doubtful, so expect him on the list. That leaves two more spots. Dean Lowry.
It's Baltimore's going to be a run-heavy team. I think you want to have a lot of defensive linemen, especially with a questionable Ogunjobi. What if that groin, pops back up mid-game? I think you want to be heavy on the D-line in this one.
All right, so let's assume Lowry dresses then. Which way you leaning with your other 2 inactives? Probably going to be a defensive back, so Corey Trice might be down again.
Well, yeah, one of the corners. I think obviously if Jackson is up, then Trice may end up being down. If Jackson is down, then there's your inactive there. Yeah, it gets tougher. I hadn't mapped out the entire list, and obviously there's no extra offensive lineman to make inactive anymore. They only have the 8 with Kevin Anderson going on injured reserve. It's a good question. I don't know if maybe in a rare instance where Moon doesn't get the hat or something else. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be Lowry and Corey Trice as the final 2, but we'll see what happens with if they make any upgrades or downgrades on the injury report. I would think the one to watch as far as an upgrade or a downgrade would probably be Donte Jackson, right?
And Ogunjobi. I think both those guys might be in that upgrade, downgrade camp. So we'll see any elevations that come in. That safety with Elliott, assuming he doesn't play, Minkah Fitzpatrick will probably continue to play a lot of the box safety and really assume the strong safety role. Will that hurt the pass game? Probably, but they're going to need him to play the box. There really is no other option, assuming they do not elevate Eric Rowe for this game. Now on Pickens, we should note, report came out after the Thursday night game last night, and this is from Albert Breer, who said the Steelers are optimistic Pickens will play on Christmas Day, which is now in, 5 days from now. So, he did not officially practice the entire week this past week, even through the team's walkthroughs on Tuesday and Wednesday, but we did see him working fairly aggressively on the side. So hopefully he can. It's still going to likely be to be determined. How much practice time can you get in? Who knows? So I'm still kind of taking that with a bit of a grain of salt, but there is some positive news coming out of Pickens post Ravens game.
Yeah, it's one of those, just we'll see. We've seen people on both sides of this thing, and some people thinking not going to see him until the game against the Bengals, and then you had that report from Albert Breer last night on Thursday night, having a little optimism. So we'll see.
From the Ravens injury side, they're in a better place overall. Just really got to check on a couple of their wide receivers and Nelson Aguilar going through concussion protocol. He's officially questionable, as is wide receiver Rashod Bateman, which would be a serious, significant loss if he was not available. He's got a foot injury. He was in a walking boot on Thursday, although part of Brew's report last night said the team is more optimistic and more encouraged by the test results than they initially feared. The boot was more precautionary. Harbaugh would not commit to whether or not Bateman would play in this game tomorrow. He is questionable, so that's really going to be the biggest name to watch for them.
And what a big name that is. I think he showed up on the injury report, a couple of days ago, and then people say he's in a walking boot and all, and that would help equalize things a little bit in this one if Rashod Bateman does not play in this. Going to be interesting to see if they upgrade or downgrade him today. He's questionable right now, so he's definitely one to watch. And even if he does play, you have to think he's probably not going to be 100%. So maybe that would allow the Steelers to have a little bit more focus. Not that they wouldn't already on the Ravens running game. Obviously, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, but it would be a significant loss for the Ravens not having him. He had a hell of a. He's been a really good receiver for them. And if you look at some of the Giants tape from this last game, he kind of did what he wanted to do in that game as well too. So, and then obviously with the Steelers kind of banged up in a second, it would make it a little bit easier kind of defending that overall Ravens run game if you had less concentration on a guy such as Bateman.
Sure. And if he doesn't play, and if Aguilar does not clear concussion protocol, and of course Deontay Johnson's not going to play in this one, he's at home right now, their depth gets really tested at that point. Now they have Zay Flowers, they have the two tight ends, and Andrews and Likely, Justice Hill in the pass game. Tylan Wallace has made an impact for them. He's a big play kind of a guy. So they'll manage through, but Bateman not having him would really be a potential domino effect.
Just play 7-on-7 tight ends and running backs, and let's rock fight this thing out. This is the best chance that the Steelers have in this, I think, is to drag the Ravens down into the mud pit and throw rocks at them, and Tucker missed some field goals, get a couple of turnovers, but we got plenty of time to talk about that later in the show here.
Yeah, that's usually how these games go. That's how the last game went when Baltimore came in, high-flying offense, Pittsburgh finding their offensive groove, ended up being 18-16. So what is the stat? The last, 7 or so winners have not scored more than 20 points in the game. We'll see if that continues. All right, Dave, let's get to the coordinators. They spoke on Wednesday. Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin did. I was really hoping to hear more from Arthur Smith in the run game plan against the Eagles, some of the decision-making there. I've been obviously critical of that. Really didn't get a whole lot from Smith in terms of that aspect. Obviously, still spoke confidence to Najee Harris despite the costly fumble. They really helped turn the tide of that Eagles game last Sunday. What else stuck out to you about Arthur Smith's comments?
Yeah, I called it, where's the quote on the truck?
Yeah, the Steelers are an old pickup truck, which not maybe the best analogy to make.
Yeah, where is the exact quote on that?
I can read it off here. He says, quote, well, it's a long quote. He says, quote, we've got to do a better job. We're like an old pickup truck. We'll run well. We're pretty damn good. And the longer you get the thing in drive, sometimes it just takes a little while to crank the engine. We've got to get some jumper cables or whatever we've got to do. I'm not a mechanic. Maybe somebody around here is. We're like an old pickup truck sometimes where we just plod along and then we get going and we have some really good drives and play some explosive football. So the Steelers are an old 1990s Chevy or something, I guess, in Arthur Smith's mind.
Yeah, how about a tune-up?
Yeah, be nice.
That didn't exceed. That wasn't kind of the analogy I was hoping to hear. I mean, it's the truth, but and sometimes we get on. Why don't these guys kind of say what's on their mind more than giving coach speak? But I mean, it's definitely felt like that. We've talked about that with the run game. That sometimes, especially as of late, especially against the Eagles, they just try to just keep pounding it, and hoping to get it in drive and keep it in drive for a couple of plays in a row. Run game consistency has really been lacking overall with this team, and we'll get into here in a little bit on some more stats on this Steelers offense, especially when George Pickens hasn't been on the field, and how much they're trying to still run because of that. And it feels in this game, against the Ravens, are really moving on forward for any game that they don't have maybe George Pickens moving forward. Talk about the Chiefs on Christmas there. They're going to have to figure this thing out. They're going to have to get this truck tuned up. They're going to, is putting Jaylen Warren out there a little bit more and just trying to, kind of hit it more with a little bit more explosion. The answer, do they need to start pulling these guards more, play a little bit less more, mid zone and go that way, but his analogy was right. You just hate to hear it come out of his mouth.
I thought for me, the most interesting comment was a pretty direct criticism of Darnell Washington for that personal foul that led to the scrum about, blocking Darius Slade of the end zone. I thought Smith would have embraced that more than he did. I mean, obviously the penalty was costly, but that's just a big guy finishing his block. And in a game like this, especially an upcoming game like this, I should say, against Baltimore on Saturday, where it got really intense in the first half of that one, I love that kind of stuff. That is just finishing a block. Remember Pat Frymuth his rookie year taking Trey White to the sideline into the third row? Like, I love that kind of stuff. And it's not, Smith said he should just dumped him in the end zone. I mean, I get your point in hindsight, but we all agree there should have been offsetting penalties on that play, 100% for the right hook that Slay threw to Darnell. But yeah, Washington, a big guy, asserting his will, setting the tone. I don't know. I thought Smith would have embraced and endorsed that more than he did.
Yeah, we even said that right after that game. You rather say "whoa" than "sick 'em," and I guess that's him saying "whoa" to some degree there. But I mean, you're trying to set a tone there and show how physical you can be. And it's not his fault. He ran them all the way out of the end zone into the back wall back there. But you want to take your guy, you want to dominate him. To me, he did nothing wrong. But yeah, I was a bit surprised, especially the way we talked about saying, I don't know if you get on a guy like Darnell because of that, because don't you want him to go 100% to the end of the whistle and drive his guy as far as he can drive him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with hindsight and knowing the penalty that ended up being so costly that turned into would have had the ball the 4 yard line. I think it would have been back up to their 18 and you settle for 3. I get the emotions of what that play ultimately cost you, even though if it was officiated poorly, maybe that's just simply where it's coming from. But I really don't have any issue with what Darnell Washington did on that play.
I don't either. I love seeing that physicality, especially out of tight ends.
Yeah. One other interesting comment from Arthur Smith in the transcript, like you've said in the past, sometimes the questions can kind of be cleaned up. I don't know if exactly it was asked this way. I'm sure it wasn't, but the question on the transcript from the team says, what's caused some of the struggles in the run game? And Smith's response in part is, I wouldn't call it struggles. If I look at it objectively, it's all really people's perception. We're towards the top of the league in rushing. Sometimes it's not as efficient as you want, but I think the biggest thing, and then he kind of goes into the old pickup truck analogy at that point. Would you say the run game is struggling? I mean, he says it's not efficient. That to me suggests struggling. He's looking at towards the top of the league in rushing. Those are some of the volume stats. They're second in rushing attempts. They're 10th in rushing yards. I don't know if I totally really agree I'm on the same page with Smith's perspective there.
No, I mean, if you rush 3,000 times at 1 yard a pop, you'd have 3,000 yards. And it is more of a volume thing than anything. And look, this team has not been great on first down situations in runs. I mean, let's just get right to some of these stats right here when it comes to the Steelers, and specifically without George Pickens on the field from True Media. Yards per play with George Pickens on the field, 11th, 32nd last in the league without him. Success rate on runs with George Pickens, 18th overall. Without George Pickens on the field, 32nd overall. How many teams are there in the league? 32. Explosive play rate, 13th with George Pickens on the field. And 32nd overall. And then, that's obviously yards per play, success rate overall, and explosive play rate. I mean, you look at just runs overall, they haven't been great. Teams can kind of key more in on the run. I would expect Baltimore to kind of do the same thing, not having to deal with George Pickens, sell out. Don't let them pop any runs. They don't have to worry about Justin Fields coming in this game either now. And doing any of the zone reads or anything like that. This run game is struggling right now.
It's at the least inefficient, and even some of the seasonal numbers, some of the more advanced stats suggest that. Even something basic like yards per carry, I think they're pretty bottom third in, but things like rush EXP from PFR, they're 30th in that. Rush EPA from Sumner Sports, they're 30th in that on the entire season, not just without George Pickens. So, yeah, I think the run game has had moments. I think it's been maybe a bit more consistent positively than past years, although the Eagles game was obviously a really, really poor performance, but it's really stagnated and plateaued at best and regressed at worst. And I mentioned this, I think, on the Monday show. They're not really soaring the way that they've had some really good finishes to the year, the last two seasons in the run game, where it was abysmal to start and then it got better and really came on strong towards the end of the season. Maybe that'll change. Hopefully it'll change. Frankly, it'll probably need to change for this team to win a couple of these games. But yeah, I mean, there is volume. There's been some success, but it is certainly an inefficient run game. And that to me indicates some level of struggle.
Yeah, and it's hard for them to have consistency too, on a down to down basis on top of it. And look, you go back at the start of the season, then you lose James Daniels, and then obviously you don't have Troy Fautano. You had a couple of games that you didn't have Zach Frazier. But if you want to look at offensive line consistency for the especially since Zach Frazier has returned from his ankle injury, you've had the same five guys in there, right? And and how many teams are actually able to say that for the stretch of games that this has happened on? And I think the talent is enough there. And then now the consistency with these guys playing better over these span of games since Zach Frazier returned from his injury, it feels like you should be getting more results. And look, I mean, yeah, I know you went for a couple of games there, obviously without Michael Pruitt, and you had Ben Skoranek. And I mean, in fact, even the last game against the Ravens, I think, didn't they not have Michael Pruitt for that one, and then used a little bit more Ben Skoranek in that one overall. But it feels like with the continuity that they've had with this offensive line, with the draft, with the draft pick pedigree in there in Frazier and Mason McCormick, obviously Isaac Seumalo, and your backs have been relatively healthy. Obviously Najee has not missed any time, and you missed Cordell Patterson for however many games he was out there. It all feels like it should be better, and this needs to go on Arthur Smith. This needs to go on, Pat Meyer as well. It feels like they should be having more success at this time of season, especially as technically healthy as they've been on offense, minus George Pickens.
Yeah, they were having more success when they weren't healthy, when they were rotating the offensive line, and when Moore was missing time, when Patterson missed time. Now the opponents maybe have shifted a little bit, but you still had some more teams you could run on in Cleveland, which is a team you're capable of running on, and the Bengals. The Eagles are a little bit different. The Ravens will be a little bit different, but welcome to playing good teams. Welcome to teams who want to win in the postseason in January. And if you're going to be the identity of a run-heavy team, you better be able to have some measure of success running on virtually any defense in football. And there'll be a big challenge on Saturday against Baltimore's stout front.
If that's going to be your, if your mentality is we are a bully ball team, we are a run heavy team, we love rolling the heavy packages out there, then you better run when you want to run and need to
100%.
run.
100%.
And they're it feels like they've been regressing. They have been regressing in that area, and it gets even harder when you take a guy like George Pickens off the field.
All right, let's talk about Terrell Austin on the defensive side. I really didn't hear a whole lot from him. He did believe and have hope that the missed tackles against the Eagles was a one-off type of thing and that it wouldn't repeat itself. Obviously, that'll be tested against Baltimore, who runs a similar style of offense as Philadelphia.
Two walkthroughs on Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday and Wednesday. And even though Thursday was not termed a walkthrough, I can't imagine it was very strenuous of a practice. So how are you able to, you're just winging a prayer saying, okay, we think it's a one-off. I mean, it was miserable tackling. What did Josh write? I mean, some of the worst.
20 total missed tackles. That includes special teams, I think 17 on defense.
Right. And now you're not going to have key we talk about George Pickens and what a loss it is for the Steelers, on the offensive side of football. Not having DeShon Elliott the way he's played this year is just as brutal, I think, for this team, especially this week against the Ravens. And then, obviously you're not 100% healthy overall with guy like Larry Ogunjobi, and even though I think he's going to play coming off of the groin and all like that. Look, they better be a better tackling team than they were against the Eagles on Saturday against the Ravens. If not, then it's going to make for another long afternoon. And one of the key components in this thing I know I go to, and I know you can't help but go to either, is the attrition that game against the Eagles potentially caused this defense by being on the field for damn near 80 plays. And then you turn around on a short week, you don't get a lot of you had the tape study and all like that. And but you got to turn around and still physically be able to do it. And I think a key to this game, which I thought was going to be a key to the game against the Eagles, was you got to possess the football on offense. And we just destroyed the offense really in really the last segment, saying they don't seem to have the run game consistency. How are you going to be able to possess the ball and eat up the clock and keep your defense off the field? Because it feels like with what the Ravens are going to do, even though the Steelers have had success against it lately of trying to shut down. Remember, the Ravens only gave the football to Derrick Henry like 13 times in that first meeting. Overall, they got away from it, and I don't think they're going to do it this time. They're going to test the Steelers in their tackling ability, especially second half of this game if it's close on top of it. So, don't tell me about the labor pains. Show me the baby. All right. If you're telling me it's a one-off, okay, let's see it.
Sure. Now, to be fair, Pittsburgh, in the first matchup against Baltimore, they dominated time of possession. They outsnapped Baltimore by 20 or so plays, and so hopefully they can replicate that. There's at least some sort of proof of concept they are able to do that against Baltimore. I think Pittsburgh tackled Barkley pretty well. Barkley didn't make a lot of people miss in that game. It was the in-space tackling that was an issue, a little bit on the receivers and a lot on guys like Kenneth Gainwell. And so I wonder, I mentioned this, I think on Wednesday, that Justice Hill, are they going to test Pittsburgh's open field tackling ability with their, pass down back in Hill, who gets involved in screen game and check downs and design, downfield routes as well. So, of course, tackling Henry is going to be the mission, and you can't lose focus of that. You can't take that for granted just because you've had success in the previous meeting. Just one run is all it takes for him to pop something off and change the complexion of a game. But if there are some positives, I do think that they showed they could tackle Barkley, they could minimize him, They minimized Henry in the first matchup. It will be tougher, though, without Elliott. And that forces Minka in the box, and that stresses the pass game more. And I'm fine with playing Minka in the box more. I think did a good job in that respect. I know he's had more struggles this year in coverage than years past, not just in lack of interceptions, but overall play. But yeah, losing Elliott is one thing to lose a really good run defender and great tackler, but then the change schematically it puts on your defense is a stressor as well.
Any play in this game on Saturday that Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry does not carry the football and a run attempt on is a win for the Steelers, even though we might not say that after the fact. Bateman banged up. We'll see if he plays. That would be a huge component of this as well, too. But like it or not, I think you got to hope for a situation where Lamar has to throw the football. You got to make Lamar beat you with his, and he can. He certainly can. Boy, I don't know how much of that Giants game that you watched, but he's proven time and time again. But look, you got to tackle better. You can't let Derrick Henry or Lamar take over this game. That you've got to make them go on long drives. Remember, they had a couple of penalties. The Ravens shot themselves in the foot a little bit in this first game. Obviously, Tucker, I think, missed a couple of kicks in that game as well, too. And remember, the game even opened with them ripping the ball out of Derrick Henry. So you got to, in addition to trying to tackle, you got a ball hunt on this. And then even in that first drive, I think the Ravens had against the Giants, they were just moving the football down the field. Lamar takes off with the football, but he gets it ripped out. And we know over the years that Lamar has had ball security issues. So I think it's kind of rare to see that Derrick Henry gave up one to you that last time in that game. But anybody else not named Derrick Henry, you really got to try to rip this football out as part of the tackling process.
And I think it's one overall point. We hear the question a lot, and I know the Ravens get asked about it each time they play Pittsburgh. Why does Lamar struggle so much against Pittsburgh? Why are the Ravens struggling so much against the Steelers? The Steelers have won 8 of the last 9. It's a variety of reasons, but I think the takeaways is a big impact when a defense like Pittsburgh or any defense can win the turnover battle, can steal possessions, shorten fields, create those splash plays where it's not like, okay, let's get the Ravens to punt here consistently. That's tough to do, but can you create the takeaways that really changes the complexion of a game? Any team, no matter how good you are, if you're losing the turnover battle, it's just that much harder to win. Not impossible, but you're going to be in for a close game in all likelihood. So Pittsburgh's ability to take the football away on Lamar and just in general, they lead the NFL in takeaways this year. They're tied first in the league in turnover differential. When you do those kinds of things, you make up for needing to have perfection and great stops against offenses like Baltimore.
The Ravens, as of late, too, seem to just play very tight, very stressed against the Steelers. I mean, you go back the last couple of meetings. Remember all those drop passes that they had in that in what couple of games ago? Was that the one in Pittsburgh? I think
that was the Week 5 game last year,
right? And they whether it be penalties or drop passes or the turnovers in the last one. Remember Peyton Wilson had that great takeaway from Hill down the sideline. I think they also ripped one. Didn't Herbig force? Was it Herbig that had to strip?
Second play of the game against Derrick.
Well, Henry. I mean, not only Henry, but then
it was Patrick Queen on likely on a tight end screen.
Was that the one? That's right. Yeah, he ripped one out along the sideline there. That's right. And then Minka got into it with the offensive lineman there. So that's the kind of stuff that you got to do. They, the Ravens, just for some reason, as of late, they play really, really tight, and they have a lot of both unforced and forced errors, and you're going to have some in this game. There's just no two ways about it. And yeah, the turnover stat matters in every game, but I mean, if you look specifically at Ravens Steelers over the years, you win the turnover battle, you're probably going to win the game.
And Pittsburgh's been a great fourth quarter team. I was pulling some of the stats last night. I don't have the whole thing in front of me, but I think in several of Pittsburgh's wins against Baltimore, they were trailing in the fourth quarter. It's consistently, I think they've only won one of these last 8 games against Baltimore when they led going into the fourth quarter. One was tied. I think Baltimore led 5 times and they lost I mean, he had to have been either four or all five of them. So Pittsburgh has really made those plays in the final moments because these games, despite Pittsburgh's dominance from a win standpoint, these games have always been close, and most of them were decided by I think the last nine have all been decided by one possession.
You roll back to that game a couple of weeks ago against the Ravens too. The Steelers, I think, only had 3 explosive plays in that game. They had the one to George Pickens, I think, down the field. Had one to Darnell. What didn't Darnell have a couple of big catches down the middle?
Two seam balls.
In that, and I think they had a explosive run by Najee in that one as well too. But on the other side of the fence, I think the Ravens had something like 5 or 6 or 7 explosive plays in the game, and it came down to turnovers and Tucker missed field goals because obviously the Steelers did not score a touchdown in that game, right? That was 6 Boswell field goals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the second 6 field goal performance Boswell's had this season. Yeah, how about the run game? How about Najee Harris? Last time he had a run longer than 21 yards, Dave, was against the Giants before the bye in week 8, 26 yards in that game against New York. His longest run since have been a pair of 20-yard runs against the Browns in the rematch in the Bengals the week before.
You just got to limit explosive plays. You got to make the Ravens drive the football field against you in this, and you got to take advantage. You're not going to be, I don't think you're going to be able to kick 6 field goals in this game and win the game.
Probably not, but these games get weird and funky, and they have been more low scoring, and so field goal kicking, I assume, will be important, and the Ravens will count on Justin Tucker to bounce back, and they've said some good things about his mentality off their bye week, and he did not have to attempt a field goal against the Giants. He made all 5 of his extra points, but that'll be certainly something to watch. So we're already kind of bleeding into our Steelers-Ravens preview, which is fine.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, there's no guest today. Since it's kind of a repeat thing, there isn't a whole lot of new ground to cover. But check out some Jonah Shaver stuff. I think he's doing some Pittsburgh related content over there for the Baltimore Banner. But yeah, going to this one day, Pittsburgh 10-4, Baltimore 9-5. If Pittsburgh wins, they clinch the division. They get their hats and T-shirts for the plane ride back to Pittsburgh. If not, this thing becomes wide open. Now Pittsburgh wins out as they beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day and the Bengals in Week 18. I believe they will win the division even if Baltimore wins out. But obviously, you don't want to be in that position. Baltimore will finish out the season against Houston on Christmas Day following the Steelers game, and then Cleveland in the finale. And so this one determines a lot. We've kind of already spoken about it, but your mentality for this game, let's kind of go with Pittsburgh's offense. How do they find traction? No George Pickens. What do they have to do differently to not get the same results as that Eagles game?
Well, just to kind of reemphasize what you just said, this is an all-in game. This is a hats and T-shirt game. This is an opportunity to nip it in the bud right now, and do so with the chips down against you. The Ravens are obviously 6.5 point favorites for a reason at home. In this one, you're down George Pickens in this one. You still have to go all in on this, and this might be your best opportunity because thanks to what happened on Thursday Night Football, thanks to the way the kind of scheduling plays out, the Cincinnati Bengals are still in this. The Chiefs, if they take care of their business, and in other words, this Chiefs game on Christmas still seems very significant for them. Patrick Mahomes probably still going to make this game, these next 2 games as well. On top of it, you could get in a situation where the Bengals are still in this thing. If you look at the schedule, Broncos Bengals next week's going to be a big game. If the Bengals take care of business there, we could get in a situation where the Bengals are playing the Steelers to win and get into playoffs. And you don't want to go into the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak, right? On top of it there, when it comes to this game specifically, you're already handicapped by not having George Pickens. You're handicapped on a defensive side of football by not having DeShon Elliott. The way we'll see what happens with Bateman. I think that's a huge development this week as far as the Ravens injury report goes. You've got to sell out. You've got to stop Derrick Henry, and you've got to. One thing I've seen on tape that I didn't think was as prevalent the first time studied the Ravens. Lamar seems to be back to running the zone read more and keeping it. So there is that element of it. You have got to sell out and stop the run at all cost in this, and I think you've got to make Lamar Jackson. You got to contain him in the pocket and don't let him sprint, because he made a couple of plays in this game against the Giants of extending the play. All the usual stuff that we talk about when it goes to Steelers Ravens has to be magnified, because you've got to keep the score down in this one. You've got to make the Ravens drive the football and not explosive play you in this. They've got to put together 10, 11, 12 play drives, and then hopefully they end in field goals if they do have those long drives in this one. But priority is, nothing's changed overall. You've got to shut down the running game. You got to get them into third and long situations and make Lamar Jackson beat you with his arm.
Yeah, since the Steelers game, he ran 8 times against the Chargers, granted for just 15 yards, but did have a touchdown. 8 for 79 against the Eagles, and that was when he said post-game, I think his mom, he said his mother was like, you got to run more. And so he ran 6 times for 65 yards and basically 3/4 of action against the Giants. He has fumbled 3 times over the last 2 weeks. So to go to your earlier point, that's something to emphasize and focus on there. Yeah, just watching back that first Steelers Ravens game, a lot of zone read RPOs. They handed those off, and Henry mostly ran those, but Jackson had a couple of carries. I think Pittsburgh understood they couldn't pay as much attention to Lamar in the designed run game as they have in seasons past, given the threat of Derrick Henry. And so you have to kind of make some choices and give some stuff up and compromise and allow Jackson more space than seasons past. But that's going to probably be the same game plan in this one. I just know, to your point, Dave, you said this top of the show, they're going to feed Derrick Henry a lot more than they did in that first game. 13 carries. He only had 6 carries after halftime. I know partly because Pittsburgh did control the clock and the Ravens got down late, had to go in the pass mode, but still, he's going to get more than 6 carries for 13 yards in the second half of this game. They know that there was a missed opportunity to not feed him as much as they probably could have in that game. So that's kind of where it starts. I saw a lot of bunch routes, 3-by-1 formations, loose bunch stacks to try to flood Pittsburgh zones, get those guys off balance a little bit. I would expect that. And like I said earlier, I'd expect them to try to really test Pittsburgh's open field tackling with some designed screens and swings and routes to Justice Hill.
Yeah, and they will, they'll throw the ball out to the edge quickly and try to get you numbers out that way. One thing that I'm worried about, that I think is going to be in my keys as well too. We saw what the Eagles did with tempo against the Steelers. I would not be surprised if the Ravens, knowing that the Steelers defense and just the component early of going tempo on them. On the Steelers defense, to try to get them to have 10 guys on the field or just have miscommunication like we saw against the Eagles. I would expect the Ravens to come out and try to run some tempo against them and try if they can do so, and if they can have some long drives on top of that. What's that going to do to a defense that was out on the field for nearly 80 plays against the Eagles? What's that? And if the game's close, that sets up perfectly for, okay, Derek, go get them in the second half and just finish them. So don't be, and they are at home obviously this time against the Steelers. I'm not expecting the Steeler fans to take over the stadium against Baltimore. So I think that's a key component to this. If the Ravens come out and do some hurry up, do some up tempo stuff in this game, how are they able to handle it? Can they make them have 48-second three and out drives, to get the defense off the field? If they run tempo against the Steelers and have success, that's just going to be that much more gas bleeding out of the gas tank for the Steelers defense.
Yeah, I would expect Baltimore to lean on that. Like you said, being the home team and seeing the success that Philadelphia had, where one play, as you said, it was actually the Watt forced fumble, but Pittsburgh had 10 guys on the field. There was confusion about who's the 11th guy on. There was one where Maud Adams ran on super late and late subs there. And so it either keeps you in your same personnel grouping because you don't want to sub and risk that communication or guys being on late, or you got to try to sub really quickly and you're on the road. It's a little harder to do in terms of where you are sideline and communication, all that kind of stuff in a different environment than your own stadium. So yeah, I would expect that for sure. Yeah, I just think it'll be a lot of the same in terms of what Baltimore wants to do, but definitely some different wrinkles in there. And yeah, the pass rush has to win. They still have to have TJ Watt. Do you think Watt will be on a snap count? How do you think he gets used in this game?
Oh man, this is delicate because you really need to win this game. And especially, I think it depends on the length of some drives overall. I mean, I don't think you can leave them out there for 10, 11, 12 plays right in a row, several drives in a row. However, if you're able to get some 3 and outs early in this thing, maybe that helps factor in him playing more snaps. I expect maybe we'll see him switch sides a little bit more to maybe alleviate the stress on that injured ankle of his. I think there's a potential of him not logging as many snaps as he'd like to log. How's that?
I think so, and I think some may have the thought of we'll just play him on passing downs, and I get the instinct on that, but these run downs are going to be just as important as some of these passing downs because you got to stop the run here, and Watt is so good against the run. So I do think you will just see more rotation, both at the start of drive and in drive than you probably do usually. Now, if it becomes crunch time, it's late in the game. Watt's going to be out there. He's going to have to gut it out and play through. There is no choice at that point, but I do think they're going to try to you're going to lean on the depth that you have and rotate a little bit more. Not crazy amount, but I don't think he's going to be out there for 90% of the snaps. I think it's going to be closer in that 75-ish type of range where early in the game, at least you're trying to manage him a little bit, hopefully have him out there full go for late in the game. One other thought I had, and I kind of lost my train of thought a moment ago, but it came back to me. Will Pittsburgh be able to kind of match personnel and be as multiple as they like to be against some of these offenses like the Ravens, where they like to use big nickel against troll personnel because of those tight end threats and Likely and Andrews? If Elliott is out, and we'll assume that he is, can you roll out a 3 safety package in this game? Who's your third safety? You got Casey, you got Minka. Yeah, there really isn't a great third option. So I wonder if Pittsburgh's going to feel more limited with some of the injuries they have and how that'll impact some of the personnel matching they like to do in games like this.
Was the last Ravens game the one that Sutton played? And not no Sutton was Sutton. Sutton
he was
back
he
for
was
that.
available.
Was it?
No, he
was
was.
it?
That was week 11. Yeah, he came back after the bye.
Was that the one that he didn't do so well in man coverage on?
He had a rough start. The Washington game in particular was pretty bad. I think Baltimore was similar.
Maybe that was the one. Yeah.
So I think both those games, because yeah, Pittsburgh and will their game plan be to rush 5 again? Because they rushed 5 heavily, and they typically do against Lamar. They did that over half the time. I think it was 52% of the time they sent at least 5 rushers in that Week 11 game against Baltimore, and that forces you to play more cover 1 and man coverage behind. Will that be the same strategy this time, or do you change it up, knowing that you've already shown Baltimore one time this year what your plan against Lamar is?
I mean, you got to sell out against the run. You got to go as heavy as possible, I feel.
Right. But for the pass game on 3rd and 8, do you send 5? Do you drop 4? What is going to be the approach from Pittsburgh?
I don't know. Is Bateman playing? I think with Bateman, even if Bateman plays, you'd have to think that he's going to be banged up. He's not going to be 100%. I'd much rather get after Lamar.
Yeah, I think regardless of whether or not Bateman plays, it comes down to how do you want to handle Lamar. And they've been rushing partly to contain, but to trying to squeeze him in the pocket by sending 5, not allowing those natural escape lanes that 4-man rushes present. And so I think that'll be the strategy. But I mean, Baltimore has to know that that could be coming because it's all they ever see from Pittsburgh. And so they have to, you would think, have some better counters and answers for it this time around.
Yeah, if I'm going to get beat in this game by them, I want Lamar to have to do it through the air down the field to guys like we'll see if Aguilar plays. We'll see what happens with Bateman. Obviously, two very good tight ends, and man, Likely has become such a good player too, and they can use him on the move and as a blocker on top of it. I mean, their passing game, and they use Hill out of backfield. There's just so many components to that offense to try to stop,
Yeah, I think the thing that Baltimore can really do, speaking of Likely, is those fake runs where they had that fake toss against Pittsburgh in that first matchup and Likely got free for 31 yards, where you have to sell out against run because it looks like run the whole way and the tight end kind of leaks out. Or I think against the Bengals the week or two before, they ran that fake quarterback power, and Aguilar was wide open in the end zone for an 8-yard touchdown. So those things, I don't even know where to begin defending those. And if you have some backup defensive backs in there, if James Pierre is in there, I think him above the neck's always been an issue, getting full, taking the cheese. You got some backup safeties in there with Elliott presumably out in this one. You're worried about some of those communication issues in the back end. Minka not playing as much free safety on early down. You're worried about holding up in the back end too. But obviously, as you said, it has to start with stopping the run, just like the Eagles' game plan was.
Yeah, I mean, let's boil this thing on down to first down on both sides of the football. Really, if the Ravens come out running the football specifically, and they're having success with either Lamar or Derrick Henry at 5, 6, 7 pops, yards a pop on first down, that's going to make for a doubly long day for this already kind of tired gas defense, if you will. If, however, they're able to get Derrick Henry or whoever on the ground 3 yards, you got to set up as many second and long, third and long situations. Now, this defense, they did a fairly good job overall. If memory serves me, in that first game, I think Baltimore was 4 of 11 on third down in this game the last time. So, you're going to have to get them in a lot of second and third and long situations where you think that that they're going to pass, so you can get out to Lamar, because the best chance of getting the football away from them is probably ripping it out from Lamar, either as a strip sack or him trying to take off with the football. So boil this thing down to first down. If you're not having first down success against this offense, we could end up seeing another 75 plays run against this defense.
Understood. I do think that Pittsburgh will do a good job overall minimizing the run game. Whenever they want to take something away, they do. That included Barkley last week. That included Henry in week 11. The question is, okay, how much of a pass game does Baltimore have? Can they win those one-on-ones the way that the Eagles won their one-on-ones? I think the Eagles have better receivers, just a better passing game when it's at its best, maybe overall. But that'll be kind of the challenge in this one. Is I think Pittsburgh can reasonably slow down the run game? Can they make it a play or two in the pass game to tip the scales in their favor, or will this be Philadelphia 2.0? I think that's what this thing's going to come down to.
And remember, in that first game, us talking about Lamar wasn't very sharp accuracy-wise early in that one.
Yeah, he was a mess. He missed a ton of throws.
Right. So, and that goes back to me saying, for some reason, these last several games, they haven't they've been tight. And it'll be interesting to see if they can make plays earlier in this game than they have in quite some time.
Yeah, I agree. Now, they will be at home in front of the crowd, and that kind of helps maybe loosen you up a little bit. Obviously, the crowd noise won't be an element when they're on the field, so that'll maybe help to de-stress them a little bit. But that'll be, a big challenge for sure. All right, let's go over to the Steelers offense. Like I mentioned, the first question, Dave, was, without George Pickens, how do you change things in order to avoid the same disastrous fate and results from that Eagles game?
Somehow, some way, you're going to have develop some run game consistency. I do think, though, that you're going to see them. This is a different defense overall, the way they're playing right now, than it was back in week, 11. They have gotten a lot better against the run. I think they benched a safety. They're having Hamilton play more deeper role now. They're not giving up the explosive plays that they were over the last several weeks. They're doing a lot better job of disguising their coverages, kind of the way that we've known the Ravens defense be able to do over the years. And the Steelers, once again, without George Pickens, you've got to find a way to manufacture explosive plays in this. And even if you get your run game consistency going in this, are you going to be able to sustain drives of 8, 9, 10 plays overall? So, even though they know it's coming and we know it's coming, and their MO is to run the football, they've got to figure out a way to have some run success. I think we saw them have some success with kind of those counter, kind of reverse counters, if you will, cut back counters, if you will. I think they had a little bit of success with some split zone stuff in that first meeting. I'd like to see them maybe pull the guards a little bit more in this one, and try to run some power. But you got to establish the run in this game if you're going to win it.
You do, and it's still a really good Ravens front. They have made one change where Trenton Simpson, the man who was tasked to replace Patrick Queen, has been benched, and Malik Harrison has come in, and that really started against the Steelers in Week 11, and that's continued. Simpson only played 5 snaps against the Giants last week, so there's been kind of one change in the front that Baltimore's made. I was going through our charting from our Tom Mead, that does a tremendous job, and I'm not going to be maybe as, I don't know what the word is, so adamant about not running out of heavy personnel in this game as it was the Eagles game, but 11 personnel had far more success against Baltimore in Week 11 than 12 and 13 and 21 personnel. Pittsburgh averaged 4.7 yards per carry out of 11 personnel in the first matchup. They had a run success rate of 66%, so 2/3 of the time, compared to heavy personnel where they averaged 3 yards per carry, had a run success rate of 37.5% in that one. I do think split zone, outside zone, more zone-based concepts will work better than some of the power type of stuff. That's what was working, at least in that first matchup against Baltimore. But yeah, you can't, you got to have run success. You got to be better on first down, have to be better on short yardage. Remember, that was the game where some of the fourth down struggles came in, a failed 4th and 1, a couple failed 3rd and 1. I think they were 2 of 4 on 3rd and 4th down, needing just 1 yard, 50%, not good enough in those situations. So can you win in those short yardage moments? What answers will Arthur Smith come up with in this game? I'll be very interested in watching.
Here's something else too that without George Pickens on the field, they're like 60% run. When he has,
what were they before? I feel like they probably were at 60% with Pickens on the field.
Well, I don't think it was as heavy. Maybe
probably
it was.
Not. I mean, probably, but they're a run-oriented team. Now, I do think, to your point, without Pickens, you do see, like you said earlier, those 8-man boxes, those single high looks. You don't see the fear of the pass game, and that makes the run game more difficult.
Yeah. You've got to be more willing to throw out of your heavier looks on first down, and you've got to find some success doing so. Do you put some 11 out of there and then try to see if you can run out of 11, run and pass out of 11 on early downs at a healthy, balanced clip?
Yeah, I think, again, you need to probably run some more 11 personnel in this game. So I think that is one element of it. You can do some heavier stuff potentially. You can always spread things out at a heavy look. Heavy doesn't have to mean that you're packed in tight, all, I form, everyone with a 2 points or 3 point stance on the line of scrimmage. You can spread things out, and there can be an effective use of that Pittsburgh has occasionally shown this year. So yeah, I think the question, okay, we kind of have a good idea for the run game, how to go about that. The pass game, you really have to scheme it up. And I mentioned this last week. Arthur Smith has to have a great game plan in terms of scheming guys open. I agree the Ravens defense has obviously been better. I'm sure whatever role that Dean Pease is having now is impacting things. I think they've always been a talented group. I think they're just kind of playing now to their standard. They were more of an underachieving group in the secondary in that first matchup. They have talent, Stevens and Humphrey and Hamilton and all those kinds of guys. I think they're just kind of playing to where they always had the capability of playing before. So how do you overcome those types of things? Again, you're going to need great scheme, great game plan.
We talked about them having a little bit of success over the middle of the field to like Darnell last time, but that doesn't play into really Russell Wilson's wheelhouse. You need to use the screen game in this one. I think it would be wise to try to get the football into the hands of Jaylen Warren in the screen game in this one to try to loosen things up. I think you need to try to attack the middle of the field a little bit more, maybe up the seam to some Freiermuth in this one, and maybe even Darnell more in this one. But man, you are handicapped. You're going to definitely have to spread the football around with not having George Pickens there. You're going to have guys like Scotty Miller step up and make a couple plays. Obviously, Mike Williams, if there was ever a game for Mike Williams to arrive in Pittsburgh, other than, obviously his first target was a big one against Washington and all, but you're going to need to find a way to get the football down the field in chunks in this one to either Calvin Austin or Mike Williams, it feels like. And then if you're going to use your tight ends, you're going to have to scheme it seam routes against either cover three or type areas that way, or you're going to have these tight ends break yards after the catch.
Yeah, I do think screen game can be more impactful. I think play action was harder and could still be harder to do against Baltimore. They defended the boot game well, which is a staple part of Pittsburgh's offense. And some of the vertical play action shots they attempted resulted in checkdowns or busted plays. So overall, but the screen game had some success. Najee Harris had a 17-yard run or 17-yard reception, I should say, off of a screen play. So you may use some of those things early to kind of get some quick wins. If the run game is struggling, can you find some run game substitution, some of the RPO game, some of the screen game, some of the quick game, some stuff like that may be useful in this contest.
Yeah, I'd like to see some RPO type stuff in this, maybe a little bit more, and if the box count dictates, get that ball out on the edge, and Calvin Austin can get you an explosive play. If you get the ball in his hands enough in this game, Jaylen Warren can as well too. I would make the focus, obviously, look, like I said, and it's easier said than done. You got to get some established run game consistency in this. On top of it, you got to get, not having George Pickens, you've got to get the football in the hands of the guys that's most likely to get the football down the field in chunks. And to me, that's Jaylen Warren and that's Calvin Austin. So the stat lines that Calvin Austin and Jaylen Warren are able to put up in this game need to be fairly significant, I think, for the Steelers to have success on offense.
At least in providing some splash. Someone has to be able to do that. Those guys are certainly capable of it. And can Mike Williams do the same? Can he make a one downfield catch, like a George Pickens for a game like this? This doesn't have to be George Pickens for the entire game, but can he be George Pickens for a play and make a great contested grab that Pittsburgh in part brought him in to do against Marlon Humphrey? Because last matchup, Humphrey was really shadowing and traveling with Pickens only on third down, only in those money down situations. Who will Humphrey be on in this game? It could really be on anybody. Maybe it's on Austin where they just kind of play sides and formations, all that kind of stuff. So, who can make that play against their top corner?
And remember early in this game last time, was it the first third down or something? They threw, wasn't it third and short? They threw down the left side and the ball went off Calvin Austin's shoulder pad.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're going to have to hit those this time.
Yeah, you can't waste chances. There's little, I should say, margin for error in this game.
Yeah, especially with and we're preaching to the choir, right? I mean, it's a big loss not having Pickens. I mean, for sure, and that's going to be so hard for this team to overcome in this one.
Right, but they got to show they can have a better plan. I mean, there is no excuse for this offense to be as bad as it was against Philadelphia, even knowing all the things they were working against, all the things they had to overcome. 163 yards of offense and the lack of success they had in really every facet is not acceptable.
They were 0-4 the last time against the Ravens in the red zone, and obviously that led to all those field goals. That can't happen again. They were 4 of 16 on third down. 25% in the last meeting. That can't happen again. They can't rely on Justin Tucker missing 2 or 3 field goals in this game. They will, however, I think, have to drag them down into the mud pit with them and throw the most rocks to win this game. They're going to have the takeaways. They can't turn the football over. Obviously, here they're going to have to play a damn near perfect Mike Tomlin drag him out for 4 quarters game.
Sure, I'm with you. And then special teams, as you said, you can't count on Tucker missing field goals, but he's obviously having a tough year. The edge goes to Pittsburgh in this one. That has to continue exiting this game. Waitman's got to be at his best. The kick coverage unit's got to be stronger. Can you get splashed in the kick return game? Haven't really gotten that this year. Had more opportunities last couple of weeks, and they've really gone out to about the 25 or 30-yard line. Can Calvin Austin come up with a big punt return? Can you get splash plays there? Can you get a turnover like last week? It's going to be a similar MO where the special teams unit really has to be a winning factor and not just break even with Baltimore in this one.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the special teams has been good overall. I think even in DVOA, they're like the number one special, but they just can't do their job and it be enough. You're going to have extra out of your special teams. That, like, Mark Robinson causing that fumble against the Eagles. It's been a while since we've seen a block kick or something. Those kind of things.
Agreed. And you can't have any of that negativity against you in this one. Otherwise, that pendulum really swings in Baltimore's favor. All right, Dave, any other final thoughts previewing the Steelers Ravens game?
No, I'm Debbie Downer today, though.
All right, I'll try to pick your spirits up here with some Week 16 picks. We're both 1-0 on the week. Took the Chargers last night. Didn't look good for a while there, but a great second half performance from Harbaugh and Herbert and company. We're able to get the victory for them. Let's get to the rest of our picks, Dave.
All right, starts off with the early game on Saturday. The Chiefs at home against the Texans. The Chiefs are laying 3.5 points with a banged up, but probably better than expected at this time of week, Patrick Mahomes.
I will take the Texans, Dave.
I'll take the Chiefs to take care of business. I've seen this movie before with Patrick Mahomes, and plus I need to make up some ground on you. So give me the Chiefs to cover against the Texans, lay to 3.5. The Bears host the Lions. You want to talk about a banged up team in the Lions and how they just keep find a way to get things done here. Although they didn't against the Bills there, but the Lions on the road against the Bears, laying 6.5.
This was a 3-point game on Thanksgiving. That was the game that got Matt Eberflus fired. I think the Lions, despite all their injuries, with that Dan Campbell grit, they win this one by 7 or more.
Boy, Caleb looks just worn out, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's in trouble.
I will take the Lions lay to 6.5 as well, too. The Eagles go on the road, play the Commanders. Eagles laying 3.5 in this one on the road against Washington.
Yeah, Eagles are rolling. A little biased seeing them last week with it. They dominated. I know they're not always to that level, but man, I mean, we talked about this before the Eagles game. Why are fans so down on a team that's playing so well? Now winners of 10 straight. The Commanders have bounced back a little bit, but I'll take the Eagles.
I'll take the Eagles. They looked like they got that, really were on track against the Steelers. I'll take them on the road, lay to 3.5 with you. How about the Browns at the Bengals with Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting at quarterback? The Bengals still in this one. Bengals laying 8.5 at home against the Browns.
I think that line has moved since last night, with maybe the Bengals playoff chances increasing, a little more motivation for them in this one. AFC North games can be close and tight, but just too much Bengals offense with DTR at quarterback. I got to go Bengals, Dave.
I got to go Bengals as well, too. I was hoping you'd take the Browns plus the points there. Rams on the road against the Jets. Don't look now, but the Rams, I think, lead their division all of a sudden here. Rams laying 3 on the road against the Jets. Jets.
Yeah, I'm taking the Rams comfortably, Dave.
I'll take the Rams lay to 3. Giants on the road against the Falcons with Penix making the start. And who's starting for the Giants?
Drew Lock.
Yeah, Drew Lock. Falcons laying 8.5 at home.
Apparently Lock is a lefty. So battle of the lefty quarterbacks in Penix and Lock. You don't see that one too often. I will take, for Penix, good matchup for his debut. Or for his first start, I should say. I'll take the Falcons.
I'll take the Falcons, lay that 8.5 as well too. Scary number though for a kid making his first start. Cardinals on the road against the Panthers. Cardinals laying 4.5.
Yeah, Panthers regressed against the Cowboys some. It's at Carolina.
It's at Carolina.
And give me Arizona.
Bam. I'll take Arizona lay to 4.5 as well too. Titans on the road against the Colts. Colts are still, they need to win out, I think, but they're still in this thing. Colts laying 3.5 at home against the Titans.
Mason Rudolph's first start of the season, just like last year. Well, not his first start of the season, I should say. That's incorrect. He started earlier this year, but first start replacing the now benched Will Levis. You get the point. He started week 16 last year for Pittsburgh. I will take the Titans. I just don't trust Richardson to play consistent football.
Boy, did you hear the head coach of the Titans asked about is his team soft in the response that he gave there? Really stood up for his guys, and a couple of curse words in there. Well, the moment I saw that, I said, I don't care what the line is. I'm taking the Titans in this one. So I think the Titans win this one outright. So I'm with you. I will take the 3.5 points. Vikings on the road against the Seahawks. This should be a good one. Vikings laying 3 on the road against Seattle.
Geno Smith expected to play, but I'm going to take Minnesota today.
Man, I'm going to take Minnesota later 3 as well, too. Patriots on the road against the Bills. The Bills laying 14 at home against the Patriots.
You know, I took the Giants last week with that 16.5 point line. I was feeling good early, and I ended up being on the wrong end of that one. I'm going to take the Patriots, though, to cover.
I'll take the Bills to cover the 14 against the Patriots. 49ers on the road against the Dolphins. 49ers laying 1 point on the road against a Dolphins team that needs to win out.
How many running back injuries do the Niners have right now? They are on their 5th string running back or something. I think Purdy bounces back. I think they refocus even on the road. I will take the Niners.
I'll take the Dolphins to upset them. I guess you call it that 1 point game. Dolphins really need this one. I'll take the Dolphins plus the point. I think Dolphins win this outright. Jaguars, a game nobody cares about, on the road against the Raiders. The Raiders laying 1.5 at home against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I know Max Crosby's a real big blow for the Raiders, but they have fought hard. They have been in some of these games. They just don't win them, but I'll take the Raiders, Dave.
I'll take the Raiders late 1.5. Buccaneers on the road against the Cowboys. Buccaneers 4-point road favorites over the Cowboys.
Yeah, how about the Bucs last week against Chargers blowing them out? I'll take Tampa Bay.
I'll take the Cowboys plus the 4. I see this being maybe a field goal game, so give me the Cowboys plus 4. How about the Saints on the road against the Packers? Another double-digit line here. 14 points, Packers favored over the Saints.
Yeah, Rattler quarterback, no Kamara. Give me the Pack.
Give me the Pack late 14 as well, too. I think that circles us back to Saturday. Pittsburgh Steelers on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. DraftKings has this Ravens minus 6.5 right now. What say you?
Pittsburgh has a ton of obstacles in this one. We've kind of laid them out pretty well. I know both teams are on a short week, and so from that aspect, it looks the same. But Pittsburgh on the road, the more injured team, playing that brutal game against Philadelphia, whereas the Ravens had a bye week 2 weeks ago. They cruised to victory against the Giants. They were sitting starters by the fourth quarter. They're on paper, it's hard to really justify how Pittsburgh wins this game, but these are the Steelers. They seem to play their best football when their backs are against the wall, when they're being counted out. This time a year ago, they were 7-7. They lost 3 straight. They had some ugly losses to the Pats, the Cardinals, to the Colts. They were on their 3rd different quarterback of the season. They were officially out of the playoff picture. We're talking about Mike Tomlin. Is he going to be the coach next year? They win their final 3. They get in the playoffs. They win these games against Baltimore. They make those plays late. They have a real, true us against the world mentality for this game that's probably accurate and fair. I don't have a great reason for it schematically or logically, but I got Pittsburgh winning this one because they always win these ones, Dave, 20-17 over the Ravens.
Oh, you surprised me there.
Yeah, I have no idea which way you're going to go. I'm anxiously awaiting your prediction.
I think my tone has been easy to kind of read here.
Mine was down too, but I went the other way.
Yeah, this seems like a very stacked deck, man. How do you score points without George Pickens? How do you get explosive plays? Can they take the football away enough? Can they keep their defense off the field? The Ravens are, they got to give the ball to Derrick Henry more in this one. You got a banged up TJ Watt. You don't have DeShon Elliott. Just everything points to how the hell, I hate to bring this up almost every other podcast now, but where would this one rank on the Mike Tomlin road win scale?
Not even just road win, just in general. It'd be the best one of the season, I think, bar none. Fair?
I mean, fair if I mean, just of the season alone, this would be the best road win, but where would this rank all time?
Yeah, I'm less sure on all time, but not even just road win of the year, but just win in general, home, road, whatever venue it is, it'd be the best, and maybe the best one of the last couple of years. Last year, I don't know if there was a better win that they had. This would be, it'd be up there for sure.
I just don't see how they can do it. I hope to be proven wrong. I think it would have to be one of those ones. But man, do you believe that Baltimore made? And we've seen it before. I mean, we've seen Baltimore play tight, drop passes, miss field goals, turn the football over. We're going to have to see a repeat of that again for the Steelers to win a low scoring game. I don't think they do it though. I think Baltimore wears them down. I think the Steelers make this a little bit closer by a late score, and get it within a one-score game as typical Steelers-Ravens, but I have the Ravens 23-16, a full touchdown win. So I have them. I have the Ravens covering the 6.5 here by half a point. So I don't see how they do it.
And so if they do it, you would just say it kind of comes down to what factors?
What I just said, Lamar's not sharp. They get away from Derrick Henry. They turn the ball over 3 times. Tucker misses a couple of kicks, drop passes. The Steelers get them with a couple of explosive plays. One a trick play, a block punt, whatever. It's just going to be something, man. I can't believe. They were able to fight them out of this one. I just don't see it.
I agree. That'll be the way to win this one. If Pittsburgh loses, to kind of get my other perspective, the reasons will be obvious, just inability to get a run game consistency going, not enough big plays in the pass game, and in the Ravens circumstances just favoring them too much. Pretty easy to map out the Ravens win, but Pittsburgh has won 8 of the last 9, and they've been underdogs in some of these games, and chips are down, how they're going to win this one, and they find a way to do it in these kind of big time moments. I do think, just last point, the stars are going to have to be stars. I mean, it's got to be a team effort, obviously, especially with things like run defense, but even banged up TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka's got to be loud in this game. Russ has got to be at his best. Like this is a game where your stars are really going to have to kind of put a team on their back, Greg Jennings style, and step up and make some huge special plays.
Who is the X factor for the Steelers on offense in this game?
It's Arthur Smith. It's Arthur Smith. Can you have a game plan to create something for these guys? I mean, you had a horrendous game plan against the Eagles. Can you find some winning formula to give your guys a fighting chance in this one? If you have a bad game plan and a lack of talent with the injuries against this defense, you don't have much of a chance.
Well, I don't care how they do it. If they come out winners of this game, it's a huge statement about this team.
Yeah, it definitely is. Who would you say your X factor is defensively?
I think Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts, both those guys together. I think you're just going to have stellar inside linebacker play in this one.
All right, fair. I'll say Minka. His last interception came against the Ravens 2 years ago, almost to the date. We're getting close on that. So I will say he's got to become true Minka again.
Okay. All right,
Dave, want to just go a quick shout out. I should have done this earlier, but be sure to answer the Friday 5, the 5 questions that'll go up on the site at 5:45 Eastern time later today. Be sure to answer those. We'll have questions for the Chiefs game on Wednesday, since we won't have a Friday 5 before Pittsburgh's next game, and of course about the Ravens game as well. Let's get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, we asked some people about the playoffs and all, so I think we got a couple of questions about that. Bill writes in, I'm torn on expanding the playoffs, not a fan of under 500 teams getting into playoffs, and eliminating the buys really makes the end of the season too easy to rest people. One bye makes that happen too. If the Steelers win this week, their last 2 games are virtually meaningless. I wouldn't say that, but I mean, obviously you clinched the North That's impactful. However, he says if they do it and go to 12 teams in the playoffs, I'd like it better. All 4 division winners get a bye and have a true wild card weekend, playing games, so to speak. I'd like it more teams alive at the end, and the byes really matter. I realize that brings the Jets and Browns into playoff teams, which is ridiculous, but having no byes will make for some bad football at the end of the season. But at the end of the day, bring on 18 weeks. I'm at an age where any weekend I get to watch the Steelers win or lose is better than when I don't. So bring it on, Bill says. Let's see. Eric writes in, there are obvious pros to the playoffs expansion, but from a purist perspective, my one and only opposition is that a clean 16-team bracket inherently eliminates byes. No need to belabor the significance of fighting for and earning a bye. That in itself, for me, outweighs any positives. Thank you for providing the best coverage and perspective. Merry Christmas. Thank you for that, Eric. Paul Brown writes in, Jake's article about Jaylen Warren stepping up as running back 1 got me thinking. I've noticed Najee Harris seems to perform better right after media criticism, then returns to lackluster performances when things quiet down. His production this season mostly comes from a good stretch in October after he received a scathing media backlash in early October before the Raiders game. He asked, do you think Najee and players in general are motivated by negative headlines, and though they claim the opposite? Is this just coincidence, or could media narratives be influencing his inconsistent performance? If so, why does it take media influence for him to increase his production? Paul, if it takes media criticism for you to play well, then you're probably not going to play this game very long. I have not looked back at these instances that you're saying here. I don't think Najee's a guy that, the media's rolled down on him, look for him to have a big game this week kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think players can be fueled by a lot of things, and certainly some can be fueled by criticism and showing the haters, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if Najee is or not. Maybe he sees some of that stuff. I imagine he's probably a guy that's able to tune out that noise more so than most people. But I don't think it's the media is not challenging me this week, and so I'm not as motivated to have success in this one. I don't believe that for a second. So I think it's only a thing that'll add on, maybe sometimes light a small spark under some guys. I don't think it's something that most players need to have success. And I certainly don't think Najee Harris is one of those guys. I think it's a lot more on-field factors that determine his success or failure more so than what the media is saying pregame.
All right, David Kapoor writes in, please, NFL, do not add additional playoff games. I'm in favor of subtracting 1 team and going back to only 6 qualifying per division. Top 2 get byes. He says, I don't even like the 17-game schedule. I want to go back to 16. Also wish they would eliminate Thursday night games and midweek holiday games, but of course I'm watching all of it, so ha ha ha, they got me either way. I hear you, David. I'm a traditionalist. I hated the move from 16, but if follow the money, I'll watch every game that they throw on the TV against me. It doesn't mean that I think it's right though with all these, the Thursday night and the midweek holiday games, but appreciate the feedback there, David. Garrett writes in, Ravens Steelers series. Are the Ravens ever going to figure out how to put up 20 points again on Pittsburgh? I know the stat is going around about Pittsburgh beating Baltimore 8 of the last 9 games, but that graphic Dave shared of the scores was maybe even more impressive. The Ravens haven't scored 20 points against the Steelers since November 2020. I think that's what Alex is counting on this week. Complementary football hasn't really been a thing for the Steelers over the past few seasons, so it's not like the defense was getting a whole lot of help from the offense over the last 8 matchups either. So he's just re-emphasizing how close these games are. In other words, throw everything out when the Steelers and Ravens get together.
And that's really been true. I mean, it's really doesn't matter what kind of style and what records are and how many points each side is scoring. And the Week 11 game is indicative of that. The Ravens are flying high, and Pittsburgh could put up points, and it just became a real throwback. Kind of 2010s type of Steelers Ravens game, especially in the first half without Chippy, it got who can show cooler heads and who can avoid that penalty for personal foul can be a difference in this one. So yeah, it's crazy. It's a really unique rivalry. It's why it's considered one of the best and probably the best in football right now. It's not quite what it was, but this game will be intense, knowing that everything is on the line for both sides.
Mike Shorter has an interesting one here on 11 days, 3 games. He says, I'm so addicted to the Steelers and now your podcast. It makes my car ride so much better. All right, Mike. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike.
He says, we are thinking too much about 3 games in 11 days. Is it Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, the equivalent to Monday, Sunday, Thursday? I really think the issue is the stacked AFC North games and playoff caliber teams after our bye. Thanks, NFL. Thoughts on this? He says, fingers crossed for this game, but we are in the playoffs. Let's get healthy and make a run. Okay. Is it Sunday, Saturday, Thursday, the equivalent to Monday, Sunday, Thursday?
I mean, I'm not doing the math on the days, but I assume I'll take Mike at his word that he is, but it's not easy either. No matter the configuration, 3 games in 11 days is tough. And yeah, certainly the opponents don't make it any easier. But I think it's just hard to win in the NFL in general. My standpoint in terms of the short schedule is even less about that. But again, you talk about, okay, Baltimore's on a short week too, but they're the home team. They had a bye 2 weeks ago. They rested starters against the Giants. They're a healthier team. Those are the things that really, I think, give them the edge more so than just it's a short week for Pittsburgh.
And what is the whole AFC North games right in a row? And I mean, playoff caliber. I mean, he makes a good point, but still, it feels like Steelers are always in the center of these things, doesn't it?
I don't know. We live in that world so much, so
Yeah.
it's easier for us to feel whenever there's that kind of negativity. Again, these teams are all we're talking about are all in this boat. The Chiefs are 3 games in 11 days, right? The Ravens are, the Texans are. So Pittsburgh is not alone in this, but it certainly does not make it easier. And if you really kind of dig into the circumstances, I think the obstacles for this Ravens game I just laid out is a real mitigating factor. And then you got to prepare for Mahomes on a short week. If you're preparing for the Browns, actually I know they lost that Thursday game, but if you're preparing for a more familiar opponent, it can be easier. And when you're preparing for a team like the Chiefs, who granted their offense is not what it's been, but it's still Patrick Mahomes, it's still Andy Reid. You'd love to have a full week of preparation to actually have a good game plan for this guy. Now your practice time is limited. Your preparation time is, of course, limited. It's just harder to get ready to face, a guy that's had your number, a team that's had your number in Mahomes and Reid and Kansas City. So I think those are the real details that make this stretch especially challenging.
You give such great answers.
I appreciate that.
You're so good at your job. Mark Urbaniak writes in, who do you consider to be the 3rd greatest Steeler quarterback behind Bradshaw and Roethlisberger since 1970?
Oh, I was going to say Bobby Lane. You took my Bobby Lane answer away because that's always what I go to. Oh, that's a good question. Who is since the merger? Dave, I'm going to let you take a crack at this one.
Would it have to even, unfortunately, be Neil O'Donnell?
Could you say Cordell Stewart at his peak? I mean, he was a pretty fun player, and he was successful. I mean, he led this team to an AFC title game in 2001.
Tommy Maddox had a brief run where he was flinging it around, but
It's not Maddox.
Yeah.
And of course, I say Stewart led to a title game. Obviously, O'Donnell went to a Super Bowl. But
right.
How that all turned out there. I don't know. Since the merger, there's also Jim Finks. Well, that's pre 1970. I will say Cordell Stewart.
Man, what if Cordell was playing in today's NFL?
I get that, but he was used pretty creatively. I mean, he was Slash. I mean, they did some funky stuff with him back then. I know the proliferation of the running quarterback is not what it is today, but I think he honestly would have been a similar guy.
I mean, O'Donnell. I mean, they both got you into the playoffs and all like that. It's tough either way. When O'Donnell was on, he was on, but when he was off, he was off. But
you have a better memory than I do of O'Donnell.
Yeah, that's a tough one. He said he adds on to here. Okay, let's take this part of it. What would Russell Wilson have to do to become the 3rd on that list? That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great question. if you just play for another season or two and have some playoff success, it's a relatively low bar.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you got to win more than one playoff game, though.
Yeah, you gotta have some playoff success, I think, to get in that category.
Let's try to take one more here. That's long. That's way too long there. Let me see if I find a shorter one here. Okay, I'll take this one from Mike. Hello, I'd be remiss if I didn't begin by saying your podcast is above all in quality and content above anyone I've ever tried to listen to. There are pretenders and there is you. Well, that's checks in the mail for Christmas, Mike. When you talked about the officials on Monday, I definitely heard a nerve being aggravated as we all feel. I need to ask a question that seems to be the largest elephant in the world to go unmentioned. I truly ask for an answer, even if it may come off as facetious. We now have all 22 instant replay coaches challenges by New York and automatic review within 2 minutes. How are any plays still missed in the NFL? How could there possibly be missed calls, especially to the level of egregiousness we saw versus the Eagles? This is not just for the Steelers, but league-wide. I realize it sounds like my tinfoil hat is wrapped in black and white, but I'm curious if referees' bank accounts are ever monitored for large transactions. Just my 2 cents in what is never mentioned. I was even a little bit more perturbed than normal coming out of this Eagles game, especially with the thing with Darnell Washington and all like that. I think this year has been highlighted by missed face mask calls on quarterbacks. I will say this, and I think this has been an overarching kind of view by several for a while. You've got a $1 billion industry here in the NFL, a machine, if you will. Why aren't these officials just full-time? Why aren't they, no offense to the grandpas and the old, I'm old. I'm 56 going on 76. Why don't we have younger full-time officials? I think pretty soon you're going to see several of these things like face mask stuff that are not so subjective be rules, but in the flip side, they don't need to have where every play is stopped and you lose momentum in the game because of challenges and all like that. There has got to be a better way where less things are missed in a quicker time that does not upset the natural traditional flow of game. I'm asking for a lot there, but
it's supposed to be replay assist. It's supposed to be the answer to these real-time quick decisions that get corrected. And
they're not getting that even right, it feels like. You know?
There's still some issues there, yes.
So yeah, you're going to hear a lot of talk of this after the season, especially if you get into a playoffs and a missed face mask ends up going into it. I guess I can, after watching the fan view of that dust up in the Eagles game, didn't the flag come out more when the Calvin Austin came into it there? They just missed the shot by Slay. I guess he was just so far into the backed up in there. They just flat out missed that punch at Darnell.
Right. And Washington is also shielding Slay, so it's harder to see. They miss it. I just don't know why people can't admit they just missed the call. We can just put it to bed, but they just missed the call. That's fine.
I wonder if we'll see that play out in the fines on Saturday.
It should. I don't know how you throw a punch and you don't get fined for it. Right. I mean, now that the evidence is out there, you'd be blind to it. Otherwise, we will see. I think it's a really interesting component to the second part of that question, because you're kind of getting into and you hear it a lot from the internet crowd about who the game is rigged. And I don't believe that at all. But what I think the NFL will have to reckon with and really deal with is the proliferation of gambling and betting. And then obviously now there's such an emphasis on that. You can't go anywhere these days. You can't go to any podcast, any sports show, talk show, whatever the case is, and not hear references to lines and betting and gambling and promos, all those kinds of things. There's a really long discussion to be had about that. We won't have it today. But with the increase of gambling, there's going to be more and more people that talk about is the game rigged. Again, I don't believe that to be the case. Are bank accounts monitored? I'm sure the NFL has some systems in place to try to keep a handle on those things. I know with the gambling, for players, there's a lot of different tracking and things that they can do with that, and they work with, I think, sports books to try to keep a lid on those things. I assume the same would apply for the officials. But yeah, I think in this new world where gambling is now basically the wild, wild west and anything goes, the NFL is going to have to really figure out how to walk that line. And I know Goodell talks about it, integrity of the game, but you can talk about it, but how you actually approach it and handle it, it's going to be something differently entirely.
Are crews a good thing or a bad thing? And if they went to full-time referees, couldn't you just rotate? In other words, where they're not the same crews, where, okay, you're the umpire, you go this way this week. You're the ref, you go this. Are crews a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know the answer
enough,
to this.
Yeah, to have a strong opinion. I think there's probably some value in continuity. I don't know if side judges and back judges rotate. Maybe they do. I really don't even know how they do some of those things. Head referees, those guys are obviously the head referees for each game, and there's the 17 or so of them. But yeah, I think crews are fine. We've had the full-time discussion before. Obviously, there's inherent value in that. I don't think it's going to prevent them from missing a face mask call just because they had full-time status. They are trained a lot. I think just given the real-time nature of football, there's going to be some calls that are missed. My focus is on how do we kind of save the refs from themselves and expand replay to review things, because I just want to get the calls right. I don't know why it's so hard to try to get sports to get calls right.
And I don't think more officials need to be on the field because, I think you have to even have more flags thrown that way. I don't know, but I understand why Mike sent the email that he sent, and I do think they need to look at full-time referees. I would be interested to see the pros, and I asked that question not having researched any of this. I would like to know the pros and the cons of having crews versus randomly assigned referees that they have to meet before they have to, meet.
What would be the difference, though? What would be a potential benefit from randomly assigning referees and all the?
I don't know, just so they don't get in ruts, I guess.
What do you mean by ruts?
This crew, has a propensity to throw more, call more. I don't know. I didn't research. That's why I'd be interested in a study in this. But also, it'd be hard to get a crew of referee. I would imagine they'd have to do it on Zoom, where if you randomly assigned this crew to this game at the start of the week, they would have to Zoom together and things that they're looking for. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, it's all good brainstorm ideas, but yeah, I think the gambling aspect is the really interesting one. And I'm not somebody that leans into the rate stuff, but I just know the perceptions have changed and the chatter has changed, given that the NFL is really used to be the NFL. You could thought it was the only gambling references you would get is the Al Michaels, little Sly, and there's some people really happy about that field goal at the end of whatever the case is. Like that was as close as you got. Now it is so intertwined, and that's kind of scary. And I think the NFL at the least has to really study something like what was his name, Tim Donaghy from the NBA. That one official that we know was. He obviously has tried to kind of couch how we work, but basically was rigging games and calling games certain ways to benefit bettors and all that kind of stuff. You ever listen to any of the interviews that he's done since he's been out of jail? Really interesting stuff. Obviously, you have to kind of take his words at some grain of salt, given his past. He's trying to obviously kind of clean up his image some, but there's some really fascinating interviews about how the process worked, and it's worth listening to. And the NFL, I think, should be just aware of the history of that, just to have a better idea for anything that could be down the road.
All right, Alex, we got through several emails here. Got a couple more. We don't have time to get to them, though. We apologize on that. Alex, one of us is going to be right and the other one's going to be wrong as far as who wins this game. I hope you're right. I hope I'm talking about how wrong I am on Monday. Regardless of the outcome, we will be back on. We got to do Monday. Yeah, we have to do Monday, I guess. Yeah, because let the rest of the NFL play out. But we'll recap all this on Monday. There'll be obviously plenty of written up on Saturday and Sunday following the game, breakdowns and all that stuff. But we'll be back on Monday. And in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Today's Friday, Spaghetti Friday for me. What are you eating today?
I'm not even sure. I got my meal prep server. It's probably the last meal there is going to be lunch today.
All right. With that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.